How are the Native Americans in Canada represented in the government and general cultural in Canada? I am part Native American myself, and I have family that live up in Canada on reservations. Here in the U.S., we are highly underrepresented, so I was curious as to how Canada compares. So we wanted to include this just because we thought it would be a missed opportunity, or we would be remiss not to acknowledge this part of Canada if we're having a podcast about Canada. Mm-hmm. It's a really heavy topic, and one that I don't think either of us feel super comfortable. We're not incredibly knowledgeable about this topic, but we should at least acknowledge that, similar to the US, the First Nations people that were here before Europeans, there's a long and dark history of those people being colonized by European settlers that we live with to this day. If I could say anything about it, and I know this is an incredibly low bar, I'd like to think that in Canada there is at least a bit of a national conversation going on about what it means, about what reconciliation is, and what it would mean to reconcile with that history, in a way that I don't really get the impression. I'm not under the impression that really happens in the US as much. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, and you could just say it's just lip service, but I think it's fair to say that we have a prime minister now who, no matter what you think of him or agree with him politically, I don't think he's just talking. I think he does give a shit about this issue.
Yeah. And just for some context, I think it's 5% of the Canadian population is Indigenous, which means First Nations, Métis, or Inuit. And there is a long history of oppression, residential schools, and just social harms that is very well, I mean, I can't say whether it's well done or not, but it is recognized, at least in our government. And I think in broader Canadian context, I think most Canadians understand. I remember even being taught about this in high school. It is part of the Canadian history books to understand the harms done to Indigenous people and the ongoing conversations to try and repair things and make things better, because it's, especially for Indigenous women right now, or for the past few years, there's been a national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women. So it's something the government is working on, but more than that, I think most Canadians know that that is an issue here.
Yeah, and it's a super tricky topic in that, like, there have been inquisitions and inquiries into things, but at a certain point, like, the conversation has to be about, like, what concrete actions can be taken, and I feel like that's still lacking, but neither you or I on this podcast are going to be able to have a real conversation about that, I don't think. And
we're not really in the best position to, because we are not Indigenous, so it's something that is hard for us to speak on or for. So I'd recommend, if that's an issue that you're interested in, to go, look up some websites, look up for Indigenous.
I mean, I'm sure you could find stuff online about Canada's history. A lot of Canadians don't know Canadian history that well, right? But I feel like this is an issue that a lot of Canadians are very well aware of.